In this month's Meet the Author, you're introduced to a debut novel, All Is Now Lost by Laura Elizabeth. This is an enjoyable read with a plot that keeps you interested and characters that you want to make friends with. Let's start with our conversation with author Laura Elizabeth. Laura, welcome to Meet the Author. I have so enjoyed All Is Now Lost. I would love to tell everybody about it and gush a little, but you're the best person as the author. Tell prospective readers what they can expect from the pages of All Is Now Lost.
Thank you. This is a cozy mystery. It is set in the Low Country on Daufuskie Island, and a cozy mystery has the protagonist solve the crime. So this is an amateur sleuth who uses her power of observation, her friends, she builds community, and she solves a mystery on an island. But before she does that, she opens a bookstore, she moves to this wonderful island, she meets her friends, and she falls in love again, finds her rhythm as a middle-aged woman beginning her life over.
Well, now you mentioned Daufuskie Island, and I understand and have read that that was your inspiration for the setting. Now you've renamed it to Mungin Island.
I have.
But tell us about this inspiration.
I've been going to Daufuskie since 2007, and it was what we call our YOLO trip. We weren't supposed to be going there, but we decided to go there through some circumstances. And within 15 minutes of arriving on Daufuskie, I knew that this was my place, something I had been searching for, moved around a lot, and I've never had an experience where I felt a connection to a place like Daufuskie. And we ended up buying property on our very first trip to Daufuskie, still on the ride home, and we have 2 pieces of property on the island, and it has been a major part of our life, of our family. Our kids have grown up there. It's really a very meaningful spot for us.
Oh. Now, if Daufuskie was the inspiration for the setting, what was the inspiration for the plot?
So the plot was based on, it's funny, we laugh, I'm a graduate of Babson College in Wellesley, Massachusetts, and Babson has a very entrepreneurial focus. And all my life, as I've been traveling around, I've always thought about businesses to start and things I'd like to do. And all my travels to Daufuskie, I've had visions of businesses that I would open. Candy shops, restaurants, bed and breakfast, all of these things. I haven't actually opened any, but one of them was a bookstore. And I knew that if I had the time and the means, I would love to open a Books and Brew, and that would be part of the story, which it is. But I wanted to give voice to especially women who are beginning their life over again, to know that it is hard to start when you have been in a role as a wife, as a mother, as a professional, and you segue to something else to land on your feet. And that was really I grew up with a single parent, a single mother, and watched her kind of find her way, and that's kind of what I wanted to do, is give women that encouragement to start again, even though it's scary and hard.
And especially a little dangerous in the case of your main character. So let's talk about this cast of characters that you've created. I think are so endearing. The main character, Car Jepsen, is the woman you've just described.
Yes.
Middle-aged, starting again. She creates this whole community of people. A little boy named Jacob who so desperately needed a community. The little dog Buddy, it's all adorable. So where did you draw the personality elements from? Were these people that were kind of like you knew them and injected their personalities, or did you create them? from your imagination?
Yeah. Well, in fairness, Buddy is based on my grand dog. So Buddy has a leading role. He is no longer with us, but all of the rest of the characters are bits and pieces of people that I've either met or encountered in some way, but I did really grow them from my imagination, and I wanted them to be real. I wanted them all to be different, to come and put their strengths and their abilities and their personalities into the mix, which is very much what a community is. It's all parts of the puzzle together, all equally as important, all with their own roles, their own skills, their own, like Miss Lucy, who's the baker. She is a very important person because she's the glue that keeps the island together. So everyone has a place in Munjan Island, you know, and everyone has a place in the community. And so I wanted them all to be different in their own way.
Well, I was very excited, having enjoyed the book as much as I did. If you'll ever read, it's book 1. All Is Now Lost is book 1, which means there's more books coming. Yes. Okay, so how will we see Carly and Carr and Company evolve in book 2?
Well, book 2 is just finished. The manuscript has been submitted to the publisher. And so Carr and Barb and Trip, the core group, and Jacob, and his mom, all appear in book 2. And now they're starting to figure out, okay, Carr has been on the island for a year, and she has had this year of doing her business. She's facing a new challenge. She's starting to understand that the tour season is here. It's going to slow down a little bit. What does she do now? Is the bookstore going to be enough for her? So she's facing some personal challenges, and it's interesting because Trip, who is a little bit on the fence about whether he wants to be involved in mysteries, he has a decision to make. Okay. So he evolves as well.
It's funny, I just read a book with Karen Slaughter's introduction, and she talks about how she was afraid to always put a community as her setting because she said no one would ever live there if there was that much danger. Are you seeing that as part of the evolution of your creations?
It's one of the reasons that I don't call it Daufuskie is that I don't want people to feel that their life is in peril going to this beautiful place. It is, I am thinking that there will be between 5 and 8 stories in the Island Mystery Series, and I'm hoping that people get the sense that in spite of the things that the characters encounter, it is still a beautiful, magical place to be.
Well, we're going to get back to that because I want to ask you a little bit more about Daufuskie later. But tell me, as excited as you must have been publishing your first book, how would you summarize the highs and lows as a debut novelist?
That's a great question, and there are highs and lows. It could be even in the same day at the same event. You know, you're thinking that everything is great and you get great feedback, and then there will be somebody who, you know, comes and shares something that didn't resonate, or there may be opportunities that you thought that as an author you'd have to be in a show, and those don't happen. Honestly, it's the readers who sustain me and encourage me. I have readers who have taken this book and grabbed a hold of it and are anxious for book 2 and want to know what's happening with the characters. Mm-hmm. And they email me, they connect with me on Instagram, they Facebook, they are asking, they follow me on my newsletter, and they'll say, you know, you were going here, what happened? And I'm actually forming a community around a community. It's been a blessing that I did not expect, and I get a lot of energy from my readers.
Now, you have enticed us, especially those of us who day trip over to Daufuskie. If we haven't visited, what advice would you give a new traveler going over to Daufuskie? What should we pick up on, and how quickly should we get there?
Today. You should go now, especially as beautiful as this weather is. It's always a good time to go to Daufuskie, in my opinion, but you do need to plan, and especially if you are going overnight or for several days, because there aren't the conveniences that we have on the mainland. You know, there isn't a grocery store. There aren't the things that are part of everyday life. So you do have to be intentional about going to Daufuskie, but the community at large, I mean, I always use this example. My cart broke down on the island one time. I was with my son, broke down the side of the road, and I called the rental company that we had, and they were coming to help me. There were 15 people in 15 minutes who stopped and said, do you need help? Do you need a ride? Are you? So the community itself is always ready to say, go here, look at this, see that, yeah, this is the way to go. But know what you want to get out of it. And if rambling around down dirt roads and seeing a beautiful beach and sitting under an oak canopy is all that you want, you will have that, and you can have the day trip that you want.
Sounds good, and it is tempting. It is tempting. Now, before we let you go into your presentation, what are some ways we can keep in touch? You've mentioned you've got people connecting with you on Facebook and Instagram.
Yes.
At Laura Elizabeth?
Yes, on it's actually on Instagram, it's The Island Mysteries.
Okay.
Facebook is Laura Elizabeth, The Island Mysteries. Also on LinkedIn, I have a website.
Right, let's get that website, because
Yes.
that way we can put that up and everybody can make sure that they
Excellent.
get on.
Excellent. It's theislandmysteries.com. And right when you go to the website, there's a pop-up with a place to put in your email if you want it. I do a monthly newsletter, so I don't bombard people with email, but it kind of sets the tone for what is coming, what has happened, so people can opt to subscribe to that. There's a place on my website that talks about book clubs. I've been to many book clubs, have book club questions for people who want to host their own. All the places, podcasts, all the things that I've done.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I know I've scavenged some of them for sure before we met today. It's a great invitation that you've given us to come into Mungin Island and meet these people. We can't wait to meet more and excited for your presentation.
We did what any modern family does. We Googled, where could you go and from Richmond, Virginia, that is pet friendly and not, you know, some of the hot spots that we already knew about, Outer Banks, Myrtle Beach, you know, all of these things. So on page 2 was this quirky little place called Daufuskie Island, the Melrose Resort, and we thought, well, this seems interesting, but how do you even say this word? How do you do it? No one we knew had ever been there. We didn't know anything about it, and we were really running out of time. So we took a chance and we made our reservation. So we got on the boat, and at that time they had a trolley that picks you up on the dock and bring you to the Melrose Resort. And we turned left into the resort, and all of the live oaks were there, just like they are on this cover of the book, with their canopies. And I had the strangest sensation of finding home. I had never had it before. I mean, I've lived in a lot of places, moved a ton of times, was happy doing those things, meeting new people, wasn't a problem for me to do that, but I never felt the connection that I felt in that first few minutes of being on that island. It was probably no more than 15 minutes, and it was like all the things I had been searching for were there, and I was home, even though I was literally my first day of vacation. So it is a very magical, important place to our family. We spent that week there. We ended up buying property in Melrose on that trip, and that's how strong we felt that a connection. And I had all the dreams of building our home. I had taken my job with me from Connecticut, and I was gonna, give my children this kind of free-range childhood in the summers where they could just, do their thing, and there's not that many people there, and it was gonna be really a lot of fun. And the resort went bankrupt 8 months after we bought that piece of property. So it was another loss that I was not anticipating, and I really struggled with it emotionally because it was all of those dreams, the plans, the way it was supposed to be. I reconnected with somebody that my husband and I went to college with, a long time ago, and he said, "What have you been up to? What have you done in all these years?" And I said, "Oh, well, we've lived here, we've done that, we've worked there, this one, that one, this thing." And I said, "How about you?" And he said, "Oh, I just wrote this book. I'm a 2-time stage 4 cancer survivor, and I just wrote this nonfiction book about how to survive cancer." And I had known that he had the first round of cancer. It wasn't that long after we left college, but I didn't know about this. We had just lost touch. And so I told him about my passion project, and he said, "That's an amazing story. I want to introduce you to my publisher and have him, talk to you about writing a nonfiction book about leaning into your passion project." And so I said, I had never thought about writing a book. So yeah, sure, I'll talk to him. And it was just that easy. Yeah, sure, I'll just do it. And the publisher talked to me and said, "That's a great story, but we're not going to publish a book." It's you're not Prince Harry, you're not famous, you don't have a big social media following, you don't have any credentials, you're not an architect, you're not any of those things. And I didn't want to write a story about how to put together a resort project. I wanted to write a book. If I was going to write a nonfiction book, I wanted to write a book about saying yes to what you're called to do, leaning into that and saying, if you did something and I did something and this person did something, imagine all the things that could get done, for good, So that's what I wanted to write a book about. That wasn't really very compelling. So he said, "If you want to write a story about your love of this island and, all that you've benefited from your time there, write in a genre that you love, and then we'll see. We'll see what happens." And I thought, I didn't really I read mysteries. I read a lot of mysteries. I've always have. Wasn't really interested in writing a mystery book until that moment. And that was the way that I could tell the story about all the things that I love about Daufuskie. And so I thought I could probably do it. I don't know that he'll publish it, but I could. How hard could it be? Well, it's actually hard. So just in case you're wondering, it is hard. So writing a mystery is hard because obviously you want readers to come along on the journey with you, but you don't want to tell them all the things, right? You have to keep them going. It's pacing that is hard. It's at what point do you put out the Easter eggs of the clues and the characters so that people don't say on page 50, "Well, I know who it is," and so I'm done. How do you keep people invested in the story and move it along at a pace that's consumable and makes sense and people buy into it? So it was hard, but I loved writing it. I found something that I loved doing. I loved finding these characters. I loved bringing them to life. I loved finding these friends, and I couldn't wait to be able to just have the conversations between the characters to say they've discovered something or they've discovered something about their relationship, So I submitted the manuscript. He said it needed to be at least 50,000 words. This is about 60,000 words. And then I waited, and I was doing a presentation for my job somewhere, and I saw the email that just said, "Call me." And I thought, that can't be great. So I'll call him before I do this presentation because I'd rather know if he's not going to publish it. And he said, "We're going to publish your story, and we want this to be a series. We want these characters to go on. We don't want them to end when the story ends." And I thought, won the lottery. You know, I've won the lottery that I get to continue my friendship with the characters and explore their adventures with them. So we've decided that there's going to be between 5 and 8 books in the series. I just did finish book 2. It's with him now. And that's the answer to the question of how did this happen? No one is more surprised than me, because these were all things a few years ago that weren't even on my radar at all. And it all happened with saying yes, you know, saying yes to what was in your heart and in your mind, to say, you know, why not me? Like, I mean, why not try? If I don't try, the answer will always be no. But the thing that's been really super exciting is the book has recently been turned into Mystery Dinner Theater. And it was brought to life at Kaya Vineyard, which is in Dahlonega, Georgia. It's North Georgia, about an hour outside of Atlanta. And we did 3 performances in March, and they were all sold out. I wrote this script. I mean, I had no idea how to write a script, but we wrote a script, had a theater company come in and do it under the tent. It was to hear the characters, you know, to make them now 3D, you know, to see them, to hear them. It just was wild to hear them say the words that I wrote. It was unbelievable. And Kaya has asked to do 4 shows next year for book 2. And the Georgia Writers Museum is going to be bringing this book to in January, February to stage at their museum. So it's just another avenue of people exploring the book and the idea of a cozy mystery, and seeing an amateur sleuth kind of, you know, run the show a little bit. So I want it to be. It's funny, I write about the things that how you want them to be, you know, like Books and Brew, which is the bookstore the protagonist ends up buying and opening, is a bookstore and a tea shop. And there's a room in Books and Brew that is dedicated to trades. And in my mind, we always talk about all these businesses that I would have opened if I had, you know, a pot of money and time. I would have always opened all these businesses on Daufuskie. Like, I had a donut store and a candy shop, and I've had a lot of businesses, but none of them actually exist in real life. But when I was writing this book, I thought, I'm gonna have a bookstore, because I always wanted to have a bookstore with these wide, old, like river oak floors, and you know, a ceiling fan and a screen door that kind of squeaks when it opens, and you know, rockers on the porch. And but I wanted it to be, because Daufuskie is not a homogenous community. There are people who are very wealthy. There's some famous people tucked down some dirt roads, but there are also people who have nothing, and maybe not even running water. And so I wanted a store that would welcome everyone. And so the trading floor is a room that you can swap, and has a table in there, old farmhouse table with mismatched chairs, and people eat there, and they have their book club meetings there, and they can go get a cup of tea, and they can sit on the porch, and they can make this store their own. And that's the store that I would want to have if I was opening. So you see parts of what, if I'm writing it, I might as well write what I want. So I wanted that store, and I wanted that place, and I wanted it to be, again, a place of community. And so that's a really important feature in there, but it's really, the idea is I want these books to kind of solidify that message of finding your home and your place, and building your community wherever it is. This happens to be the place that I love, but there's lots of places that give that sense of peace and connection. And so it's the people of the places that do it. You know, sat down at the dining room table with my laptop and said, I could do it. And so That's what I said. It's hard. And there are things that you can do. Sometimes people ask, are you a plotter or a pantser? And that is within the writing community, people do ask that. And a plotter is somebody who plots out your story. Pantser is somebody who writes by the seat of their pants. So knowing that I bought property on a whim on my vacation, probably not a plotter, but you do still have to have an idea, a roadmap of where you're gonna go. Like you'd still, even if you're gonna wing it, it has to make sense, because immediately people are reading your book, and if it doesn't make sense, they're not gonna continue. The reader's gonna be frustrated. You're writing when I am writing, I'm writing for the reader that I am. And if it doesn't make sense, I'm not gonna figure it out. I'm gonna be done. And I'm okay with not finishing a book. So it has to make sense, and that's where, when I write, and then I stop writing, and I go back and edit. And I'm always touching the manuscript, always going back at least 2 or 3 chapters and making it better and better and better and better. And then some days the words just don't come, and so I'll go further back. I always work on it to, keep enhancing what the dialogue is. I read the dialogue out loud. I make sure that that's how that character talks. That's how she speaks. It's true to that person. So they don't all sound alike, all the characters. It's very important to me that they are real people in an imaginary world, so they speak like real people do. So that's been super fun too. And I do a newsletter. Is part of being an author is, you just don't write the book anymore. It's out meeting readers, talking about it. I've been to book clubs. So I do a newsletter, and in that newsletter, a lot of people end up writing to me and ask questions about Daufuskie. I've planned some trips there for people, shared pictures with them of places that are there. We've traded recipes. There's a baker in the story, and so sometimes at events they bake the Toll House cookie pie that's in the story. It's really been an amazing way to connect with people, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So actually my publisher helped me with that. My real name is Laura, and I was going to, my maiden name is a derivative of a German name, and I was going to use part of that, and it would sound like a seashell. So, but it's spelt with a C, S-C, and so I thought, it had that nautical kind of sound to it, islandy, it works. I don't have a middle name, and so my legal name is my first name, my maiden name, and then my last name. And so the publisher said, no one's ever gonna get that. So they're never gonna spell it. No one's ever gonna be able to find you. No, so pick a solid first name, so it'll act as your last name. So we had a couple of choices, and it's kind of weird to be renaming yourself, at this point in my life. It's like an identity crisis, So we're like, well, no, you don't look like a Catherine, and So we went through a bunch of options for my name, and then we did some searching to find out, did other people also have those names? And there were other Laura Elizabeths, but they weren't in this genre. And so, so it was, and then they were not trademarked, of course, so, or else I wouldn't have been able to take them.